Good evening. I'd like to ask everyone to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, I would make a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda with one change, which is before adjournment, after item H, for an executive session to discuss pending litigation that the district will be involved in. So with that change, can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. No blue cards, so we can discuss with the open forum. The proposed executive session that's on the agenda does not need to happen tonight, so we're going to move right into personnel. And can I get a motion to accept item D in its entirety? A motion by Mrs. Fishman, second by Mrs. Wood. Any discussion on D? All those in favor? Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Galvan, who is our superintendent in acting superintendent today. Mr. Colbufo is at a superintendent's conference down a little further downstate anyway. And so we have Ms. Galvan, and she has some new employees to introduce.
Yes, I'd like to begin by introducing our new Executive Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Dr. Kristen Collins. And then our second appointment tonight for Library Media Specialist at Paul B. Moore High School is Miss Rachel Rock. Rachel is a welcome back. She was a teaching assistant for our school district at Central Square Middle School when I was principal there in the library. So welcome back, Rachel.
And make your marriage, if you'd like to come up, we have an amazing welcome gift for you.
Oh.
I believe that's all we have with us tonight.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome to both of you that are here. And with that, we're going to trudge ahead in the agenda, which is our consent agenda. So can I get a motion to accept item E in its entirety? Motion by Mrs. Nickerson, second. Down at the end, Mrs. Sundit. Any discussion on E? All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. And with that, we move to special presentation to the board. So I would invite Mrs. Erin Phillips, our Executive Director of Elementary Education, up. We have a presentation tonight on elementary curriculum mapping.
Hi, everybody. So over the summer, it was towards the end of August, I got a call from Tom regarding some questions on our elementary curriculum that had been brought to board members. So there was a three-way conversation with Andy, Tom, and myself one August morning. So I thought it would probably be in everybody's best interest if I just updated everybody on where we were, because we've been kind of working on overhauling some things. So back, I believe it was the 2014 school year when everything Common Core kind of came at us very quickly. We adopted the CKLA skills and listening and learning part and the modules for 3.5. Some people interchange that terminology, but our K2 or our pre-K2 is called CKLA. It means it stands for Core Knowledge Language Arts, and then the ELA modules are 3.5. In 2016, Larry Wink, the principal at Hastings, had two sections of teachers there, Francis Knighton and, but they approached Larry with piloting the third grade, because CKLA goes pre-K to 5. So he said, okay, we'll give it a shot. We don't really have much to lose. So they piloted that for third grade. And then fourth and fifth grade jumped on. So Hastings is the only building currently that uses CKLA pre-K to 5. So that poses some problems district-wide when you're looking at district-wide data, or it can, along also with teachers communicating and not being on the same page with certain things. So with that, we have started some district-wide looking at our students and their performance on not the state assessments, but our own current local ELA benchmarks that our curriculum consultants created using item banks and some that model state testing types of questions. So a little bit more rigorous, higher level types of questioning for the kids so that we can get a gauge as to their proficiency moving forward. So we started this about 2 years ago. It was just the principals and myself looking at our district-wide data to say, you know, where are we in comparison to each building with its different standards. And then we said, well, it really shouldn't be just us. So then we started getting the curriculum consultants in. So the curriculum consultants, myself, and then now today we had a meeting where our reading coaches were there. So we're taking a look a little bit deeper at, today was specifically our reading data K3. In terms of our benchmarks, the results that we were seeing were consistent. So our standards, our reading standards, our writing standards were consistent. It doesn't matter if the kids are getting instructed in the ELA modules, or if they're using what Hastings is using with the CKLA the curriculum from pre-K to 5. The kids are performing the same across all the buildings, with the exception of, on the writing benchmarks, the grammar piece, so the language component. CKLA does have explicit teaching of prefixes, suffixes, root words, and things like that as it shifts from second grade learning phonics to third grade, more of the morphology piece. So that was holy smokes, look at Hastings, their results are higher than the other 3 buildings because the modules doesn't have that explicit grammar instruction. So that was eye-opening when we saw that.
Can I ask a question?
You sure can.
Can you put it in layman's terms, meaning my terms, how much of a difference there was? I mean, was it massive or?
It was about, on the language standards, and only those standards in the writing, it was about 5 to 10% difference. So significant enough to say what's going on there. And then when we looked and we dove into the curriculum, we know that's, okay, here's the why behind it. And the modules just don't have it. And it's been a kind of a piece of conversation, you know, how can we add it in there? So with that, when we really started looking at this, and you know, Tom was in this position and I was in this position, we were having conversations, and we really need to. Our kids are so transient, not just between our district and districts outside of Oswego County, but within our own 4 districts, our 4 buildings. The kids travel, move. They might start at Hastings, go to Old, maybe go to Hawk, and then maybe even end up back in Hastings. We've had, you know, some of those. So it really makes sense for our district to use the same curriculum K-5 in every building. So that was a conversation that kind of took place with Tom. And then knowing that we've got social studies standards and inquiries that came at us, and we've got the new next generation science standards coming at us. Elementary doesn't have a ton of extra time in their day. So somehow I've got to fit skills, I've got to fit the knowledge part, I've got to fit the math, I've got to fit science, and I've got to fit social studies along with lunch and special and recess, because kids need recess in a very short amount of time. Not happening. So the principals and myself and with the, blessing from Tom, said, yes, please curriculum map, so that everybody's on the same page. Districts have done this years ago. Other districts jumped on and just adopted what the state gave us, and that's what we did. So we're trying to kind of right the ship a little bit. So, so that's the reason behind curriculum mapping. It's kind of a long process, so we're going to talk about that. So 2 years ago was when the conversation first started, and I really needed to get staff members that were kind of people that thought outside the box a little bit, that weren't afraid to take risks, that planned using standards, that utilize formative assessment regularly and engage instruction. So each building was charged with finding those people and bringing them back. And then we had to narrow it down to two teachers per grade level, because I didn't want anybody working in a silo with a grade level, so that they have a partner to bounce ideas off of and work with. We've got all of our curriculum consultants, all of our principals are involved in it. We've got our pre-K teacher and special education teacher. So the group is well represented. We had to start with actually, what is curriculum mapping? What is our vocabulary? What is the process? Why do it? And it was, we met after school and participated in a video series kind of thing, and really learned the ins and outs of curriculum mapping, so that moving forward, when we got to our own stuff, our teachers knew what to do. So knowing that we couldn't do it without some type of technology program, each group partnered up, and they did some research on different companies that were out there with the help of Irena and the help of Stephanie Maturo with BOCES. They did the research, presented it to us, the entire committee, on pluses, minuses of different programs, what they, there's a whole checklist of things that they had to find and report on. Some companies were great and they had tons of information on them. Others not so much, to where the people researching had to call companies and maybe either didn't get a response or it just didn't fit us. So that happened and that process ensued, and then they presented and we narrowed it down to 3 companies. Stephanie helped us set those companies up, and the teachers globally were looking for, we used to use Mastery Connect a few years ago for the last couple of years, which is where all this data previously was, and the benchmarks were standards-based, able to look, narrow right down to growth of kids with the standards. But they wanted something streamlined, something that would be reportable, because our elementary report cards are standards-based, so something where they could export the information and it would import into, instead of double doing work. I can't say I blame them. And so they were looking for something more streamlined. Enter eDoctrina. So eDoctrina is a company that is situated out of Buffalo, right? Buffalo. And Leah Chase has been fantastic. We contract through OCM BOCES, and they have the ability to, it's still standards-based, all of our assessments will be in there, our curriculum will be in there, so the team can upload the benchmarks, they can upload the formative and summative assessments right in there, and it'll feed into, they can export it, and it'll feed right into school tools. So it will be streamlined. So that was one of the deciding factors as to why we went with eDoctrina, not only because it was semi-local, it had the New York State next generation standards that are in there already, and the streamlining piece. So it really kind of fit not only our needs, but also what the teachers were looking for. So we are currently, the group worked diligently over the summer and we met with one of the PD people to help us get started. He was there for the day to fix any tweaks and things that we had, and they got going. So they worked, there were 2 summer days this year. They're going to continue to work this year on building and developing those maps or those units. The overall goal is to create interdisciplinary units. So because we don't have that time factor, or that resource of time, we're going to really embed science and social studies. And when you look at the CKLA stories in some of the module stories with their social studies and science, there are units that are able to be done interdisciplinary, which is very helpful. 3 through 5 is going to be embedding the language branch from CKLA into all of their units so that every teacher, grades 3 through 5, will now have this at their disposal. They don't have to try to find, how am I going to teach prefixes and suffixes and root words? They're going to follow that piece because our data has shown us that the kids are responding to that and they're able to do that work. CKLA is not going away, so that's a core knowledge. That is pre-K 2, which is all of our phonics stuff, that bottom half of Scarborough's rope that I talked about over the summer or in June. So that is going to be taught as it was intended. So we kind of chunked pieces out or maybe didn't follow through on certain things that we should have, or gotten to certain units that are the foundation for reading, which is what our data is showing us. So we're going to back to teaching that as it was intended. So we're going to have the full hour of the skills component along with the full hour of the knowledge building, which is the vocabulary and the auditory comprehension and pieces of that. And then we have an additional what we call intervention or team time. So kids will get kind of what we're saying is the core, so the core of language arts, and then a little bit more. So they're going to be getting, depending on what the kids need, they'll have assistance in that. And then, so pre-K through 2 is a little bit easier because they have that CKLA component, but 3 through 5 is a little bit more challenging, obviously, because they have more meat to social studies and science a little bit. So those teachers are in the process of really looking at the social studies inquiries and the science topics, and it's going to be a little bit of a, they're really developing their curriculum going forward. So they're looking at, one of the stories in 5th grade is Esperanza Rising, which really ties in with one of the social studies inquiries. So they're going to be bringing in some texts, not only Esperanza Rising, but some other texts through the social studies inquiries, and really enhancing that unit and going a little bit longer with that. So it'll be a bunch of different texts and things like that that will be, I think, a little bit more engaging for the kids, and higher level with the types of inquiries and hands-on and kind of investigative work that our kids right now might not do a whole lot of. So our goal is to work throughout the year on continuing to do this work. I would like to have our K-5 or our pre-K teachers meet bi-monthly with me, so that's not as big of an issue, but really meet is at grade level. So the 2 first grade representatives, Melanie Payne and Denise Hawkins, to meet with all the first grade teachers and kind of roll out what they've done already so that they can ask questions, get familiar with it, give feedback, participate in it. I can't have every first grade teacher, every second grade teacher work on this, it will never get done. So they're kind of the leaders, but then they have to bring it and we have to get feedback. So I'm hoping that can either take place at the end of the year this year or one of our first days next year. And then the hope is that they can start using this next school year. And that's it. Any questions?
When you say you'd like to have them come together, what's the challenge or the perceived hesitation on saying to get them together?
Yeah, so we have, our superintendent's days, as you know, are countywide at the elementary level for the reading initiative. So those 2 days are already gone. And our half days, because the team won't be ready to come February to really share things out, because we haven't, they haven't started working yet this year because of, we're only 2 weeks in. And we've got our October day that's already planned, our half day, September is already planned, so some of the days are already planned-ish. And then we don't have, because we moved some of them forward, there aren't many in the spring. So I have to figure that all out, but that is one of the barriers that's coming into play. And I know we've got to get in the CKLA or the OCLI training, so, because the teachers need that in order to instruct our kids on how to read. So it's kind of, I got to do a balancing act with it.
Yeah, 'cause that leads into my question is how does the reading initiative come into this?
So the pre-K 2 is, they are still using CKLA. So that skills block is not going away, and that is still going to be there. So there's the two pieces. There's the skills part, and then there's the knowledge part, or the listening and learning. That's where they're taking the science and social studies and trying to embed it there. The skills part is that foundation. It's their phonics skills, it's their sounds, it's their phonemic awareness, their blending. That is staying solid and true. The teachers are just putting it in the math so that everybody's following the same pace. The assessments are in there, and they can give their kids that. So that is not changing. That's not going away. That's our foundation. They're just going to try with the knowledge part of bringing in science and social studies where it fits to be able to hit those standards as well. So it meshes, and then the language component, which is part of this, is going to be embedded now into all 3-5, which it currently is not.
Okay, maybe I didn't state it right. So you have the Schuylkill County Reading Initiative, right? So how is that also getting blended into?
Yes, that's the skills part.
That's the skills
Yes.
part, okay.
Yep.
All right. I'm now caught up.
Aaron, just to clarify, the modules still are being used as a resource, not a requirement, correct?
That is what, so they have to for the past, I don't even know, 4 years, since Tom started. They have used those in 3-5 in the 3 buildings, and they've had to follow the talk, because there's your higher level thinking, the text, which is given, so like Esperanza Rising, but there's other things, other texts that the teachers can bring in and use along with that. The talk, the text, the learning targets, which are again standards, and the tests. So if teachers want to bring in more things, extend it a little bit, that's their opportunity. But those 4 T's are what has been the same, consistent, nothing changed with that.
So delivery of whatever they're using and other things incorporated around them is still up to the teacher, and they have flexibility, but those 4.
Correct. Yeah. So if they know they've got one group reading The Beautiful Roof in the World, which is the rainforest, and then there's another article or another book that has a similar, because within the modules, they give you other texts that you can use. So if a student is higher or lower, there's other texts that they can use as a supplement if they want. I haven't seen many teachers do that, honestly, but it is there because they're all the texts that kind of still go along with the same theme to the unit that is being taught, so that everything is still kind of, the targets are still there and everything, so.
So the biggest risk of this is the roll-up piece, right? Is to get, not the development of it, but actually rolling it out to the teachers.
Yeah.
Am I getting that right?
Yep, that's one of them. For the people that are developing them, it's daunting because they really have to look and see, okay, how does, second grade, for instance, their social studies, I think it's second grade, yeah. Their social studies inquiries are constantly about, they kind of all come back to a map or the globe or continents and things like that, where they fall. So when you really look and you lay it out, it all comes back to that. And the CKLA stories tie into that as well. So if you can't see big picture and you're only looking at, here's my unit that I'm on right now, but now you've got to take social studies and science and this big ELA piece, when you look at that, there's this reoccurring theme. So it's kind of like they have this big question at the beginning of the school year, and all year long, they're going to be going back to that. But the teachers have to come to that aha and realize, so they really have to have, like, when they are working, they've got laptops out and they're looking at different things, and they've got all this paper spread out all over the place, but they have to tie it all together. They've got to make sure the social studies standards are there along with the ELA standards. And that's, if you're not a big picture thinker, that's why one of the criteria was really people who think outside the box, you're going to miss it. So and then I have to look at them and check them and make sure that the rigor's there, the texts are appropriate, and when you use the librarians with that. So building it, but then the actual rollout too is going to be the piece too. But
I mean, I don't know where, just for the risk, if the rollout should be planned by a certain date.
that I asked Pearl to put up your last slide. To me, and I don't know if we're saying the same thing or not, but what really sticks out is if the goal is to have the grade levels come together for feedback, you can't wait until September. Your goals are rolled out in September, right? So, I mean,
Well,
at that
we
point,
have-
it's feedback for the sake of saying, checking the box. It's not feedback.
Right, no. If we are able to do our calendar the way, if I cannot get it in this year, and even if we take it and the grade level people bring it back to their own buildings, and then we get together as a group and we figure out how, I have to see how far all the different grade levels get to know when there's a good point to bring it to the teachers. So if we have to do that and then bring it back as a group and say, okay, Brewerton's third grade thought, here's the feedback they gave, here's the feedback Hastings gave, and then see what are the commonalities and what aren't, and make those adjustments there. If we're able to do our calendar the way we did it this year, and we've got a half day on September 30th, we can always roll out that first unit and have it, give it ahead of time, and then meet and discuss it there, so that for October, we start it. So it wouldn't be missing a lot, because a lot, especially at K2, a lot isn't changing for the skills part. So, but my hope is to get some type of feedback, at least for the first unit, by the end of this year, so the first unit is ready to roll out.
So Connie, I gotta put you on, this is a big deal, I'm gonna put you on the spot, right? This is a big deal this year. I say that we're changing all of elementary instruction, right? I mean, not instruction, but the philosophy and.
Well, I think we're just raising the rigor of the philosophy. I don't know that we're changing it. We've been saying that we were going to do it for a long time. It just isn't an immediate jump in. We're actually doing things a little different than we used to do. We're looking ahead, planning, and then walking into it. Unlike, I guess, kind of what we did when the modules were handed to us, and it was, we're going to adopt them, which I think is what Chance was asking about. And then within a week and a half, we went to adapt them. And that's what we had.
So we're gonna take longer than 3 weeks, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this time we're taking a little longer, but we're going very deep and very wide instead of just making a decision. And Erin's, she's been pretty good with me about, can you get this money in this grant? Can you get that money in that grant? She's not afraid to ask. And we've been able to do it. So I think that she's going to be fine. And then we're going to work on the schedule, as she said.
Right.
So the PD planning is going to be the biggest piece to that. Because you got to get it rolled out, but you don't want to get it rolled out before it's ready, because then it's going to kind of turn out, and it's going to kind of turn out the way it did the last time.
And they worked so hard on it, I don't want it to flop on them.
Because once it flops, it's really hard to turn it back around. So we'd rather wait until October and make sure that it goes out seamlessly.
And I'm hoping I don't have to. I'm hoping that at least the buildings can bring some information back, so when we work over the summer, they can do that, and then, share it first day, opening day. We'll just have to see how much they get done. Like I said, I'm not real worried about K2. 3-5 is the bigger lift, quite honestly.
Right, because buying is the other high risk, right?
Right.
Everybody understand, understanding what we're trying to do, and oh my gosh, this is just another thing. Blah, blah, I get it, buying
That's
is
one of
hard.
the things that she's done very well is explaining the why and how it's connected, which was not a strength of something that we did, when I first came here. We would just get told, this is what you're doing. And then you'd switch, we'd do something different. So that's why, yes, the process has been slower, but it's kind of like all those plans that we connected last week, but they're all connected. If you look in those plans, you'll see her CKLA, the OCLI, the curriculum mapping is all part of all of that. It's all been embedded all the way through. So at least it will be done consistently and well.
And I've updated the entire, for people who read my newsletters, I put out quarterly type newsletters, and there's been an update in there so that people know here's where we are in the process, here, so that they don't think that it's going away. Because when we first went to this, I went to every building and talked at every staff meeting, letting them know what we were doing, why we were doing it. The people who were on, now some of the committee members have changed due to grade level switches or leaving the district or whatever, so.
And she had some stuff to overcome because we started curriculum mapping when I first came here 16 years ago. We spent a bunch of time, a bunch of PD days, and all the administration changed, including the assistant superintendent, and nobody ever heard from it again. So when she first brought it up, I just kind of looked at her and went,
Yeah.
if we're gonna bring this up again, I was just an assistant principal and principal back then, so she did a really great job of explaining the why, promising it won't go away, and showing it embedded all the way from the strategic plan to the DSIP, to the SEP, to the building plans, to the PD plans, showing we promise we're not just gonna fail on this every year.
Well, yeah, I mean, my ears perk up, and you talk about 5 to 10% increase in something, that's a big deal in whatever industry you're in, that's a big deal, so. That's what
And only because I'm still learning all of the vocabulary and stuff, when you talk about modules and ELA and the modules versus CKL.
Okay.
If the scores were, and again, forgive me if this is a simple answer, but if the scores were consistent across the board with 1+ in CKLA that wasn't there with the modules, why wouldn't we just switch to that?
Because they still don't bring in all the science and social studies.
Okay.
So they're really trying to create units that have both of those, or at least, this unit has social studies, this unit has a science tie-in, they don't all do that.
The CKLA ones.
Correct.
But
Or the
the
modules, either one of them do, no.
Okay, so are we not module, but modeling these essentially self-created modules? Is that essentially what we're doing, is building our own modules?
For some of the units, we are.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're taking really this, so fourth grade is a lot of, their social studies is New York State history, really. Fourth grade modules and fourth grade CKLA only have a little bit in them of each.
So you have to have like a separate 30-minute period of the day to cover the stuff that's not in those 2 modules?
Right, so instead, they're taking the social studies inquiries, finding texts that are along that topic, and bringing in the ELA component through social studies.
Okay, so I am following that.
Yeah.
So in creating those kind of dual-purpose
Mhm.
skills, periods, and things like that, you said there was one teacher per grade level. Is that across the district or per building?
There's 2 teachers.
Or sorry, 2 per district?
Yep.
Okay, so if,
So like fourth grade is Corinne Mori and Jen Matras.
okay, so they talk to, I know Mrs. Morey's in Cole,
Yeah.
but they talk to the fourth grade teachers at, obviously, Cole and the
They
other
will.
building, but then they go to the other buildings that don't have representation and solicit feedback from them as well.
We will have to.
Okay.
Yes, that will be the plan when each grade level is to a point where they have something to share. First grade really rocked it this summer and got through quite a bit. I now have to go through, and some of them are going to start to implement the people who built it to see, does this really work? So they're going to try it out this year and say, no, we got to make some changes. So when they're doing that, I'm going to get into the classrooms to see, is the level of questioning where we need it to be, or is it all low level? Is the assessment that is attached to it, is it given at an appropriate time? So really kind of observing it as they're rolling it out to see, okay, is this ready, or do we need to make some extensive changes to it before it gets rolled out? So when it gets time for that, I will work with the principals and we'll make it happen so that they share it out.
Okay, and then my last, I guess, question is, earlier you had said, and I remember sitting in that side of the room when I think the first presentation was by both of you about the modules being guidelines, not mandatory. You had said the 4 Ts are mandatory.
Right, that's not changed.
That has not changed, right?
Okay, and now is that still going to be true with these self-created essentially modules, or are the teachers?
No, this will be the curriculum. So the things that are being created are going to be what every third grade teacher in the district teaches. So if one of the units is coming from CKLA, every third grade teacher is going to teach that unit, give that same test. Now, the unit is going to be such that it's a unit. Here's your formative, here's your assessment, here's whatever, here are some activity ideas. The end goal is the assessment that everybody's going to have to give. How the teachers get to that end goal in their own lesson planning, and then will be their choice, right? So if there's a ReadWorks article or another book or a poem, or, they're going to use this map or whatever, this project to get to that point, and then we
But at the end of
test
the day,
comes.
it's essentially the 4 Ts.
Yep, and the
Oh,
test comes,
yeah.
and let's say you kind of go off and you do this, I go and I do this, and then Earl and Linda do this, and they're doing the same thing, and our scores are down here, and those two are here, we might need
We
to
might need
adjust
to adapt
what we
what they're doing.
Correct.
Okay, but it's, okay.
So we'll actually be looking at the same information district-wide as opposed to what we're doing now, which isn't. So we don't know really until we get some ELA benchmarks, how kids are really doing on a daily basis with material.
And just keep in mind, that's through fifth grade, 6 through 12 is still using the modules at this time. As part of the DSEP SEP, over the next year and a half, we'll start our curriculum audits. And we'll start kind of basically the same way she started.
Mapping it and doing it.
First, we'll do an audit, we'll go through and we'll take a look. They've already started their data meetings with PLCs where they're taking a look at the state data, how are the standards being addressed, how are kids faring, given the curriculum we're using, which is the adaptive modules, how are our kids doing as far as mastering the different standards, and that's a 6-12 plan. So what she started 2 years ago, we'll start by the end of this year, but at the lowest level again, so you won't see big changes for us for a couple of years.
That's fine. I just was trying to understand, 'cause I remember the upheaval when the modules were pushed out initially, and it being that, you're handing a box to a teacher, and that teacher, after years of training and experience and everything, they basically shot that out the window and they just followed a module.
It's a teaching away.
I mean, the interpersonal
Right.
ability to recognize that every child is different, and, a human can probably determine better than a computer or a book as to what the best way to teach that. And so I just was concerned because that was, one of the things that was a recurring theme when people were talking to me, about their concerns. And so I was happy when you two presented that and said, no, it's just a guideline, our teachers are our assets, and they're, we want to harness that. And so, the 4 Ts being mandatory, that's how it's been. Essentially, there may not be 4 Ts, but there's going to be
Right,
parts
here's-
of the modules that
yes.
will be required.
Here are the standards, here are,
Same sort of thing.
Yes.
There's going to be certain thresholds.
there might be a certain book that they all need to use because that's going to be part of their writing or, whatever the assessment's going to be. But they can always add
Okay.
information, projects, things like that. So it's not going to be, take it out, go to lesson 2,
We're on day
It's not
37, so here's day 37
Right.
worksheet format.
And
Yes.
it's not only they can add, I would hope
I would hope they do.
I would hope they would be assessing the people in their room and saying,
Right.
You need more, or you're not
we
ready.
need to do this, or we need to do that.
And is there room for that when the teacher recognizes that the kids just aren't getting it?
A
Then they can
curriculum,
stay,
yeah.
or they can come back to it?
they
and-
should, it should.
Right, but I mean, another set of concerns that I heard was, once you get to this unit, if you're not on, it's not literal, but, if you're not on page 376 by week whatever in the school year, then you're behind and you need to explain yourself. And, whether that's because the students just weren't ready to hit 370 and were rather, still on 3-4, whatever it was, I was just wondering, is that still, okay, if you don't get it, well, we got to get to 350 this week, otherwise I'm going to be in trouble as a teacher.
Right, so for example, what our data is showing us, K5, pre-K5, well, K, because pre-K hasn't really started, is words with a silent E. It is our stone cold killer. Our kids have bombed it, and if you look at a 5th grader's profile on our data that we have, their profile looks the same as a 1st grader, 2nd grader, 3rd grader, because that skill is not a skill that our kids can do. And this is even from high kids that are above, high average readers. They are missing skills and they are missing gaps with their phonics skills. Vowel teams are controlled vowels. We are, as a district, our kids are struggling in those particular areas. Silent E, when you go and you look at kindergarten's scope and sequence, is taught Unit 10, Lesson 7. A lot of our teachers, for lots of different reasons, snow days, 2-hour delays, field trips at the end of the year, things like that, don't all get to Unit 10. And if they get to Unit 10, they might not get to Lesson 7. That's where Silent E is taught. That's the foundation of it.
Maybe we should move it up.
Well, so, but it's,
But
the
then
way
something
it's
else
taught,
would
but
fall.
something not right.
Yeah.
So 1st grade,
They
Silent
should-
E is taught Unit 2, Lesson 3. First grade teachers are assuming that kindergarten teachers have gotten to this, have taught that skill. So they're picking it up. They missed the foundation. So this year, now that we know this, right, we have data to show our kids district-wide are missing this skill. It's going to be talked at data meetings this week. Teachers are going to see it. Our first grade teachers have to go back to kindergarten, unit 10, lesson 7, and kind of start there, so it's a Band-Aid. This is one of the reasons why for CKLA we're going back to as it was intended. So that is our non-negotiable. On a snow day or on a 2-hour delay, if their skills part was at 9 o'clock in the morning, then it's going to go into the afternoon, because that is not a block of time that we can miss. Math was always our non-negotiable because there were more than 180 lessons. So no matter what, math had to be taught to get it in so that you weren't, again, missing the foundation for your next grade. Skills is going to be that same way, because if our kids can't leave kindergarten at least being exposed to, no, not mastered, because again, it's in first grade and it's again in second grade, but at least some foundation of that skill, then we're going to be in this pattern and our kids aren't going to make the growth that they need.
So like, I'm saying this for my benefit as well as anyone else, but as a non-educator at first, when you hear something like you have to be at this point, it sounds almost, it's nothing more than in a company, big projects, there are benchmarks, and if
Right.
you're significantly off, you're not gonna hit the end game, right? So it sounds to me bad at first.
It's a
but it
pacing
makes
guide,
sense.
you know, it's a pacing guide. And if teachers, you know, when we have our interventions time, and no, not all students are going to maybe get to that point because they're still back here a little bit, but that's what the intervention block is for, and their intervention time. And, you know, as we move forward, those students might need to get it double hit. Every kid's different, and every student, you know, just like little kids learning how to walk or speak, it's all developmental. So depending on exposure, depending on background, depending on where they were, how many times they moved, their absences, it all takes.
But staying back because those three over there didn't get it, let's just pretend, well, it wouldn't be me. She's staying back because they didn't get it. Now
What
we're
are we
being
doing?
shortchanged. Well, I'm
Yeah.
probably, you know, that's what these.
Right. No, but that's my concern is, you know, I wholeheartedly understand, and I don't mean to point to you three, but I wholeheartedly understand why we're, you know, focusing extra time on the students that are struggling with the task, but that was my next question is what are we doing for the students that get it like that? And
Right, and that's why for some kids it's exposure, other kids it's instruction, and then when they do their intervention time, then there's the other ones that get the extension. So if you think of it when you tier groups, you've got your extension, your instruction, and your intervention group, and then you've got the kids who need intervention and then more intervention. So,
And the fact that we have all that data that shows that, you know, itty bitty little piece that's missing is fantastic. I mean, I know Steve's over here, he's like, I can feel him vibrating over here, just because
you
he's
should
like,
see it. And I even got today, I got our third grade test results, so our kids that are in fourth grade this year. So they've got our third grade test results. How many kids got that? So we had 10 kids in third grade get a 4. Their oral reading fluency, so from our DIBELS, for this benchmark. And then all the subtests of the QPS, which is the quick phonics screener. And you can see there were, you know, you can get like out of 10 points for each subset skill in the QPS. And we have it broken down, the kids who received a 4 on the ELA test, on average, their oral reading fluency score was, on average, they read 166 words per minute. And they were 90, I believe it was 97% accurate across the board on all their QPS skills. So then we've got it for a 3 and the 2 and the 1. And you really need to be an on-level reader through the DIBELS oral reading fluency in order to even be close to getting a 3. But then you can't have deficits in those QPS areas because that brings you down to a 2. So, and then the correlation between the DIBELS, so the closer that you get to 1 is a good correlation. The DIBELS correlation is a 0.72. Our QPS is a 0.62, and then the correlation between DIBELS and when you average the DIBELS and the QPS is a 0.72.
what's the QPS?
The quick phonics screener that all of our kids got.
Just didn't notice this one.
Yeah. So they're pretty reliable
And I just like
measures.
rattle them off like.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
CKL,
I'm a little bit of a data dork right now, but I really think it's cool.
I love the data, I know Steve loves the data, and I know not all of us need to be here, and we're kind of having super interested, and so, you know, certainly I'll reach out and
Yeah.
get more explanation. But it's not even, I just want to understand it because it helps with understanding.
No, I think we're really trying to figure our kids out to the best that we can, so that, like, there's gonna be parents whose kids have never received any level of support, but are missing silent E, are missing vowel teams, are missing R control vowels. And when they get into 6th grade and they can't read a multisyllabic word because they can't figure out what EA says or what OR says or whatever, they're gonna struggle. And it will eventually catch up to them, and that's what we're seeing. So we're trying to really drill down and intervene because we have all this data, so we know specifically what skills the kids are lacking so that we can remediate now, so that they can take these higher level things and do things that sometimes our kids can't do right now because they can't read it.
Well, the magic words that were said in the last meeting, root cause is what we're doing.
Right.
What's the root cause of why?
Silent E.
I probably messed it my whole life.
So that,
But it's important.
yeah, it is, so that in a year from now, we're not going back to the root cause. So I'm still really, are you, for the feedback on what you're looking to do with all of them, is that, are you talking a half a day, or what is the time?
Well, if we have a half a day, that's what I would use. I would get them all together, we'd go to one of the elementary buildings and we would sit and.
Yeah, so without making all of your lives more difficult, no, because I know how this goes, but the reality is I would challenge two things. One, have we, if we haven't already, I'm not even asking, so don't answer, but if we haven't already, hopefully bring CSTA into the room, because I mean, this is they should be jumping through the roof for this, because, you know, again, that gap, that ought to be something that they want to chase, and I'm sure they do, but whatever they can do to help us in that, that's one. I'm going to change it to three things. Two is, what can we do to help support that as a board? Which leads into the last one, which is the calendar. I realize this is a simplistic view, but if something on those superintendent's days, if it's not showing as good or a better benefit than a 5 to 10% gap, then, you know, yeah, let's move it. Simplistic, I get it, but so let us know if there's anything we can do to make it happen, because that's critical, I think.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. Sorry. All right, thank you. With that, we move into reports. We have unfinished business just as a benchmark there, not expecting an update today, but kind of an idea or thought that was brought forward by our student board rep at the last meeting about some version of a mentorship or secondary Big Brother Big Sister program. So down the road, we can look for an update on that. But with that, I'll turn it over to see if Mrs. Fishman has anything for the board today.
I do not, but I have something. Let me see if I can think of it.
Yeah, we'll get back to it. I have a little mini laundry list, things to remind you of and things to fill you in on. So number one is, there's a really important city event that's been developed. Sorry, that's not the right terms. It is the Oswego County School Board event that's going to be held at City. So we'll send you out information in email, but if you can just note November 7th at 6 p.m. at City. It's really critical we get as many as we can to show up from our board, and administrative staff is welcome as well. But this is a event we got not representatives of, but we have commitment from Patty Ritchie and Will Barkley that they will be attending. They was picked specifically so that they could. We're also going to have a presentation and a talk on the P-TECH program, what it is, how it's running, what the future looks like, all that stuff. And the culinary students at the city are going to provide some refreshments / food, I think, for the night. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, what it's called.
I don't know if there's a title. It's going to be November 7th, and it's basically meeting with some of our elected representatives. So.
Did we just get an email about this? Yes. A bunch of people were involved. Okay.
Yeah, it's in there. I haven't seen a date cutoff for RSVPs, but I'll try to get that from them. But it's November 7th, 6 p.m. As always, what we'll do is, if you know for certain that you can go, let Pearl know. We'll council, whatever the cutoff date is, will just give them one final number for us. But that should be a great event, aside from even if our elected representatives end up bailing on us. The P-TECH conversation is something that, at least for Oswego County School Board, when we had our meetings, everyone agreed. We can't hear enough about it, because there's a lot of confusion about what it really is, how it's really working, whether districts are in support of it or not. So to get us all together and have one cohesive conversation would be really great. That's number one. Number two, which most people are aware of, but the manufacturing day at City is October 4th. That's 9 to 1. It's a weekday, so it's tough for most of us. But I just had a question. I can't remember who forwarded the information, so I'm just going to look at you guys. No, I understand that from attending it last year, at least from our students, it was viewed as more of a geared at middle school rather than high school people at City. And I'm just wondering, have we got that information back to City? Like, have we shared that that's the way we view it? Because that's not the impression I get in the marketing of that event. They're under the impression that it's good for middle school and high school. So I just want to make sure that we're sharing with that we didn't view it that way.
I'm not exactly sure what you're I'm not exactly sure what you mean by manufacturing day. Are you talking about the visitation day when all the middle school kids went up and the high school kids are invited to go up?
I don't know what's the same. It's manufacturing day on my board.
I know there's two of them, and one is just City, and one of them is in State Fair. And I know the Sunbrook get work on for it.
Skills USA, I know.
No,
That's not what you're talking
that's
about.
all
That's in the
in
state
February.
fair events, okay.
That's just a statement level.
I'm just looking to see if I can pull it up here. And of course I can't right now. So I'll
I know I did a permission slip for Nathan for manufacturing today.
Yeah.
That is.
So if it's the one that I'm thinking of, we put it out to the middle school, parents get to decide if their kids are gonna go. Some don't.
I wish I could pull it up right now, I can't, but when the information came out, I had asked, I'm not sure who responded, maybe it was Tom, but I'm not sure, but the response was that some kids went last year, it was viewed as more of a middle school thing, and that actually our high school students are going to something at Skinny Atlas. I don't know if that impression was, but,
It's right on their landing page on the website.
oh, on City's BOCES
Yeah.
for the manufacturing day.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's a ton of manufacturing companies in our area, and it exposes the kids to the careers and opportunities in that area, but
I took it as more than 10th graders now, 11, 12. Trying to get them to go into their 11, 12 program.
yeah, it says geared for junior and high school, but anyway, I'll circle back, I just didn't.
I can look
wasn't
into
sure
it
we
and
had
find
any
out
more.
if it's not,
I could read the article attached to it, because your specific question was, is it geared towards individual feedback? And I can't answer that question.
Yeah, and the press release does say it's geared towards junior and high school, but, and again, I'll circle back in the email portion of it, but our feedback was that last year it was viewed as more as a middle school, and I want to make sure that if City's thinking it's geared towards both, but we're viewing it as we went there and the students said, oh, this is a middle school thing, I know they obviously want to know that, but, and the long and short of it is, all of us are invited to that as well, that manufacturing day, so if you'd like to attend, you can. And then I think the last, two more things. Again, on the City topic, City, I think in part of the request or message from Ms. Haskins is offering a tour. So we had talked when Mr. Powell was here about, because we're all come from different experiences and we've been on the board different periods of time, we may have different ideas of what is or isn't offered at City, what it really encompasses. So they are willing to do a tour, which I think the City Board recently did, of their different programs. You probably won't hit everything because it would take an entire day, but I'm just letting you know that because I'm going to have Pearl coordinate sending out some sort of survey to see if there's a time where we might be able to get at least some of us to go. It's difficult because I'm sure with them wanting to do the tour and us wanting to see program, it will be a weekday. It's not going to be a weekend thing. So we'll try to give enough time to allow as many people as can to attend it. So look for that. And then the last thing is the NISBA resolutions. Pearl sent that out to us. We don't have to do anything with that tonight, but just make sure over the coming weeks you look at it. I think it's the October 20-something meeting.
I think I read that
Yeah, should pull up my calendar.
Yes. Yes, lovely to be watching.
Perfect. So October 21st, as a board, for particularly the newest board member, and I don't know if we did this when you were on the last time, Randy. What we've done the last couple of years is we come in, or ahead of time, you let us know if there's any resolutions that you as a board member would not want to support. Because the way they word it is, most of the resolutions are put up and recommended to be adopted by NISBA. There are a few that are put up and recommended to be voted down. If you agree with the recommendation, you don't say anything. If you disagree with the recommendation, then we would talk about it at that meeting on the 21st and vote as a board, because Mrs. Nickerson is lucky enough to be our voting delegate. And so her duty or job that day is to vote as the board would wish. She's our delegate for voting. So that's October 21st. Yeah, and the last one is just, probably won't tell the announcement, but Cleveland Elementary is officially sold. The DEC has purchased the building, everything is done, and I think even the utilities are signed over, right, Maureen? So, good job, a lot of work in the background on that. And I do know that they're doing, Tom, and I don't know anyone else from administration, and some student or two and some news agencies are going out Wednesday to do some sort of article on it. So as good of an outcome as you could hope for that building. It's fantastic news. So that's all I have. With that, I'm going to first start with our student board rep. If there's anything you'd like to bring up or mention tonight.
Hello. I just want to say, I would like this experience to prepare me for my future. So please come to me with any questions or tasks that you guys want me to do. I would like to be as busy as possible throughout this year. And while I'm here, I truly want to help the district. So any way that I can help you, put me on as many projects as you can. And I will, over the next coming weeks, I will hand out my information to all of you for contact information. And hopefully we can get started very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Logan. Open it up to the board. Any topics, anything to bring up? Nothing? Trudging on then. It is time for the superintendent's report. Ms. Galvan.
I'll keep it pretty brief. I really only have two things that Mr. Kulabugu asked me to transfer. Really hate that. I have a letter from Trainer Dave. It's Dave Sierra. I'm just going to summarize it. He had sent a letter to the Central Square community. He said he would like to take a moment to say a few words. It comes with great sadness that he's announcing his resignation as Central Square's athletic trainer. He started with Central Square in 1993 and has served in the capacity for 26 years. He's with us as a part of SOS. It's not our employee, it's a service that we had contracted through. He wanted to be sure to thank all of the athletes, their families, coaches, school nurses, the athletic director, the administrators, and all staff at Central Square from the bottom of his heart for the opportunity to participate in this capacity over the years. He said he will be forever indebted to us for the opportunity, and go Red Hawks. You will forever be in my heart and in my soul. So again, it's not one of our employees, but the service through SOS, and SOS has changed what they're doing. So yes, we will still have trainers, we'll still have the service, but we just won't have this gentleman. Also, I have received notification from Mr. Dranzak that Mr. Dave Sierra, who recently retired from athletic training at Central Square, will be receiving a Section 3 Service Award at the Section 3 Athletic Directors Meeting on September 25th. The award goes to an individual that has dedicated their services to student athletes of Section 3. So on his way out, he's going to have that second recognition as well. And that is it for the superintendent's report.
Well done. Mr. Cole, when you watch this back, that was nice and brief. It was really well done. We tease. All right, if there's nothing else, I don't think there is, then we're going to move into item H, which is items for action and discussion. So I'll make the motion, then we'll open up for discussion. So I'll make the motion to accept item H1, the acceptance of the superintendent's goals for 2019 and 20. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Fishman. Now we can open it up for discussion. I'll start just by saying this, and I told Mr. Colabufo that this is what we do. We're going to talk about it tonight, so feel free to share any comments or information you have. We're going to accept the goals tonight. That doesn't mean that there can't be adjustments. For instance, I know there's been some discussion on a couple of the goals. There's been a desire for a little more measurement of how that goal is accomplished. So we can adjust that. It's just a little difficult to do that tonight because Ms. Colbrook was at a conference, so we can't get that clarity tonight. But if we can accept these goals so that we have the outline of it, then at the next meeting, they can come back with some clarity on the ones, and again, we can discuss which ones those are, but you can come back with some clarity and better measurement of that. And the reason that I like to go ahead and accept them tonight is because then we can begin the process of working on our goals. Our goals, it's not like we have to recreate the wheel. Our goals are to help them accomplish, and this administration accomplish these goals. So with that's how I started. So I'll open up the conversation and any comments or questions on it. Well, do you want to just click on the link to his goals just for a second? Just as an example, Pearl, if you want to go down to, I think it's the second page. Yeah, it's the last one. So as an example, I know on the last one, because it talks about to increase the number of volunteer hours, there was a desire for, what is that measurement though? You know, if we improve that total by 1 volunteer hour, is that really what we're looking to achieve? And even in passing, Tom totally agreed with that comment, so he's open to more clarity on it. But if the outline of the goals and the direction that he's taking the district in with these goals is good and there's no other comments, then we can go ahead and vote. So speak now or hold your peace. Until later, that's right. All right. Being no further discussion. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm already voting.
Oh, all those in favor of accepting the goals in their current form? Thank you. All right, and with that, we are going to, we're not doing the Board of Education workshop on board goals tonight, but what we are going to do is just kind of put it on your radar. So Mr. Todd has offered, he recently did a session with the Oswego School Board on developing their goals. So I asked him to share some of the templates and just kind of conversation starters that he did with them because he said they were really well received. So I'll get those out to everyone. Use the time between this and the next meeting. We can do some of this through a shared sheet just to gather some ideas so that when we get in here for the next meeting, it's a work session, you know, not starting from scratch. So I can get that out to everyone. But then the goal would be to develop the goals, use the 2 weeks between that meeting and the, I think, October 21st meeting to just refine them and make sure we're all aligned and adopt them at that meeting on the 21st. So any objections or questions on that? All right, in that case, I make a motion that the Central Square School District Board of Education hereby moves into executive session to discuss litigation in the matter of Bryant versus Central Square Central School District with no action to follow. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. Loye. I'll open it up for discussion, but there probably isn't any because it's the first you're hearing about it. So, all those in favor? Thank you. We won't have further action even though we will be closing the meeting up, but thanks for all for coming and welcome to the district.